Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Temporary Inclement Weather Shelter webinar. My name is Daniel Roby, and I am here with the beloved Reverend Griffin to talk to you about inclement weather sheltering in Dallas. And we're going to hear all from Rachel about her experience running temporary inclement weather shelters and our journey together to be able to get to this place where we could operate inclement weather shelters in Dallas. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Rachel, I'd love to hear initially, what inspired Oaklawn United Methodist Church to participate? You guys have always been on the forefront of social causes, but this was really a next level. Would you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. It was the winter of 2017. This was my first winter at Oaklawn United Methodist Church, and as soon as I was appointed there, which happens in July, I started really building relationships with those who were part of the church, who were part of the community, and that certainly included those who really resided in and around the grounds of the church. And so I began to meet many of our unsheltered neighbors who really I would describe as people who are experiencing a more chronic homelessness and don't typically find themselves in shelters around Dallas. And so what I became aware of was, as the temperatures began to drop, I had some concern for what would be happening with these who are really part of our community. And it was our first freeze of that year in 2017 when I heard on the news the sad news that an unsheltered neighbor had died in a bus stop right outside of one of our United Methodist churches in Dallas. And that really grabbed hold of me. Following that, one of our unsheltered neighbors asked if they might be able to come in that night because it was going to be a very cold night. That was on a Sunday morning, and I met around the coffee pot between services with a couple of our trustees and asked if we could do that, and we did. So we opened that very first night with little to no planning and really developed from there. But that's really where we began and what spurred our decision to open our doors and open as a shelter the first time.
That was such a meaningful year, and as I go back in my memory about that, I remember that same person in that same scenario, because I had such a strange interaction where someone had come to my office, said, "Hey, Daniel, we want to give you it was like give you an award," and then immediately they were interrupted. "Daniel, I need to let you know somebody has passed away just a couple blocks away from having frozen to death." And I remember having such an impact, trying to reconcile the fact that we're celebrating great work, but there's clearly so much that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for Oaklawn helping to lead that charge over these many, many years. So, I'd love to hear a little bit about what your process has been to open up. What are all the things that you had to put in place? And I'm sure that'll be different, as other churches come on board. But what was that like for you, getting your congregation involved, setting up the coffee station? I mean, how did the whole thing work for you?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting journey that we've been on, and I hope that it's a journey that's paved the way for other churches to be able to maybe get into this in an easier way. But pretty quickly we learned that there were some roadblocks in the way, and namely there was a part of our city code that really kept us from doing this within the regulations that the city puts forth. And so we began working with other shelter directors and county and city officials to try to learn everything we could, because we were very aware that we're not the experts in this field, but we wanted to do what we could. We say frequently at Oaklawn that God has work for us to do, and we have that awareness and want to be available and want to use the resources we have to help others. So we really began a pretty steep learning curve of making sure that we could do the best with what we had to help the people around us. We began speaking at city council meetings to work to change Chapter 45 of our city code. And over the course of a few years, we did make that progress. And we have the ability now to have churches fill out an application and receive the right to be able to open as an inclement weather shelter in churches or other organizations. The reason that was really important to us to pass for the whole city was not because it was standing in our way. We continued and did what we could regardless of that. But we see a city full of buildings that are heated overnight, every night in those cold nights. And so, so that seemed like such an important thing to take advantage of and say, you know what, there is no reason that someone should freeze on our streets. And so, I'm thrilled that we've made that progress, and I think now we have this opportunity, this open door to invite other churches and organizations to follow suit.
So well articulated. I couldn't agree with you more. In the past several years, you've not only been an operator from a leadership standpoint, you've also been on the front lines doing it, setting up the cots, making sure, greeting people as they come in, all the different things involved with operating shelter. I would love to hear maybe what's just one impactful story that you remember from these many years of being open. If there's any one particular person that you serve that had a meaningful impact on you, and kind of how that continues to show itself in your work as you continue operating.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there are so many of those examples, it's hard to narrow it down, but one image that I just have in my mind is that when we started this process, we've operated in a few different spaces within our church building as time progressed, and we got a little better at knowing what we're doing. But we started out in the sanctuary. Yep. We slept on pews and on the floor and used pew cushions, and we started there. Over time, we also kind of moved back through what we call our hospitality center and fellowship hall. And in those years, I remember how incredible it felt to see Christmas come alive in a different way for me than I think I'd ever experienced before. Because of course, inclement weather shelter goes along with Christmas.
It does.
And so those cold nights happen to correspond in the church life with things that do normally happen in our church life, which are worship services and choir practice and things like that. So of course those things continued to happen. But instead of a normal choir practice, the choir came and sang Christmas carols for our community of unsheltered neighbors after they had had dinner. And that was such a beautiful feeling because it wasn't one way. This wasn't something the choir was offering for our unsheltered community, but it went both ways. We had singing from so many different people in the community, and that was so beautiful. And everyone benefited from that. And, you know, as a pastor, I hate to admit this, but I will absolutely admit that I said, I have prayed more in this one night than I probably have with other people in months. You know, the opportunity for just being available to those who ask for it and need it. This is not something we're, pushing on anyone, but the number of times I was asked to be present for someone pastorally was a game changer for me too.
Well, I never forget going to Oak Lawn. I don't remember how many years ago this was, and seeing a young family. There was a young mom that had an infant there. in a same church where, you're looking at a nativity set and baby Jesus lying in a manger.
Yeah.
And what a meaningful impact that had on me. Well, there had to also be a lot of challenges with doing this. What were some of the challenges that your church faced in participating, and how did you guys work to overcome some of those challenges?
That's a good question. I think every day and every year brings different challenges, and you really, I don't think you can fully anticipate what they will be. Those things that we can anticipate, we try to take care of before they become an issue.
Yep.
We pretty quickly found our way toward making ground rules and setting boundaries that just kept everyone safe and happy and healthy. Certainly, as I say the word health, COVID comes to mind, and the year of the pandemic was
Yes, of
its
course.
own set of challenges, and we all worked through them together.
Yeah.
I think with the congregation, by and large, there has just been love and welcome. There's always a challenge of thinking we won't have enough volunteers to pull it
Yes.
off, but you do.
Yes.
That whatever is needed
Yep.
eventually comes through.
Yep.
Whatever we have to offer is more than we had to start with.
Yeah.
So I've never found that to be something that was a problem that couldn't be overcome. People, resources show up in abundance, and for that I'm grateful. The biggest challenge probably is having enough space. I won't turn someone away. We'll find a way between the various shelters to make sure that everybody has a bed.
Yep.
We try to keep a bed count and be aware of what the various shelters around the city are able to hold and balance our capacity that way. But we won't turn someone away. And so always the greatest challenge, I think, is the need for more to open.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the fact that our point in time count says that we'll have, 1,500 about, people on the streets at any given time. Man, that's a lot of shelter beds, and even with, a couple of churches here and there, additional facilities that the emergency shelters have, there's still more, that needs to be done. So.
Right.
Well, I'm kind of curious about the impact of all this work has had on the congregation itself. So you mentioned that people were very welcoming. Has that always been the case, or was that a journey? Maybe share anything that comes to mind about, how the congregation's understanding too of the issues around homelessness and their sense of response to as they've learned more, and what they feel like their commitment should be as they've been further educated on the issue.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely had impact on the congregation. And I use the term congregation in a very open and nimble, flexible sense, in the same way that I understand all the work that we do. The congregation has changed over the years. I think that, there wasn't a particular challenge that I recall that was different than just growing pains of as we become more clearly dedicated to this work. I do think that it became clear for some of our congregation that this isn't the place that feels most comfortable for them. But I'm okay. I think we as a congregation have managed that well, because we have a real awareness that we're incredibly blessed in this city to have so many churches.
Right.
And there are so many churches where you can really find your way to the thing that feels right and comfortable for you. And many of those places don't have unsheltered people worshiping in their congregations by and large. That's something that is different and maybe stands apart for Oak Lawn. And I have a real awareness that there are not a lot of churches that have that. So while that might not be something that feels right or comfortable for some, I can always rest with the encouragement that there are many places where they can find that. But not as many places where unsheltered parts of our community can feel comfortable in the pews. So that's something that we're dedicated to. I know that over the years we have grown into a congregation that absolutely embraces that as their identity.
Yep.
And so, I don't currently see that as a challenge, but that hasn't been without some growing pains.
I definitely think of Oak Lawn as sort of a city on a hill on this regard, as you guys have been very open and consistent in serving. It feels like the whole city knows of Oak Lawn United Methodist Church involved in this work from the many years of doing inclement weather shelter. Do you have any advice for other churches who are kind of looking at this, interested, cautious, maybe a little bit excited about the idea of participating and being another congregation that opens up under Chapter 45 ordinance to do temporary inclement weather shelter? Anything you'd say to that?
I just want to encourage others to do it, to try. To open your doors and extend that kind of hospitality, because for me, I see that as something that we're called to in the gospel. I also feel that it's something that we are called to just as a human family. And so this and other work like this is something that we do on an interfaith level as well. And everybody has kind of their own reasons to be driven to this kind of work, but I would just encourage you not to be afraid of the unknown. That's a natural feeling.
Sure.
But not to be afraid of the unknown, but to know that you have others in the community of this work. Because I think that's one thing we really want to continue to reiterate, is that we're available to come and help nurture the beginnings of something in other churches. It's really important. I think the key advice I would give as somebody's considering it is to be flexible, to not get too set in our ideas of exactly how it will go, but just to be open to the possibilities and ready to use all the resources. We don't do anything alone at Oak Lawn. We rely on the resources of mental health professionals around the city, of the City Office of Homeless Solutions, the shelter communities in Dallas.
Well, I mean, that's a perfect tee up, because my next question was going to be, how does that intersectionality take place? Where does the church start and other providers, step in? What's the role of volunteers, both internal and external? How does it all work? How does it all come together?
Yes, yeah. I would say anybody who's considering this, think about an opening of something like this being more like a hub, because you can't really point to where one begins and the other, comes in, because we all do this together. It's about being a broader community and providing a space, a hub for it to all come together and happen. This is about what I said in the beginning: a building that is heated. A space where this can happen, and then the rest comes together. We have incredible people who help with transportation, with, that can provide food, and, volunteers coming in from the church, but also from the community who just see this and say, I want to be a part of helping somebody. And people show up. So offer training and be open to anybody and everybody who's ready to come and pitch in.
And I think about our morning call that we have, whenever inclement weather happens, where all the different providers, get together for at least a morning check-in. We get to debrief the night before. We have the mental health authority that's there. We have Dallas Fire and Rescue and Police Department, and everybody who's the city of Dallas, everyone who's working on this together to troubleshoot for the next night. And, I know each person has their role, but I can't think of an organization that's been more critical than Oaklawn. So grateful for you guys. Tell me, post inclement weather shelter, how have you seen your engagement there just continue on with people, who you may have contacted at that point in time? Have you had people that you met during inclement weather shelter that have come back to the church? What has been your experience kind of post after it's closed?
Oh, absolutely. I think that when we close, which, that's a moving target.
Yeah, right.
too. That regardless of whether we're open or closed overnight, that the people who volunteer and the people who benefit from the shelter find home in our space. That hub is not just a hub when it's freezing, but by and large, people really want to be a part of making sure we're ready the next time we need it, or just know that they find home there, that this is a community for them.
Sure.
And that's wonderful. I mean, we have people who have become part of our regular worshiping community who maybe came to us first as a volunteer or someone benefiting from a night on a cot. I mean, there's so many avenues that are open to kind of developing those relationships, and we're grateful for all of them. It's wonderful to have a community that's built on that kind of relationship that has a mutual benefit. During the Advent season, which we're in right now in the Christian church, we started having what we call the altar of plenty, which is we remove our normal kneeling rails and create a space where people can bring things that others might need.
Oh, wow.
And also where they can take things that they might need.
Yeah.
So coats, blankets, socks, food, snacks, things like that, just kind of begin to fill up the front of our worship space. And beyond that being a space that you can give and receive, it's a space that you can see who we are, what our identity is, and what our DNA is at Oaklawn. And I'm grateful for that too.
Reminds me of the early church, right? Giving to everyone as they had need.
Yeah.
Any lessons that you've learned from this that kind of inform your future outreach efforts, whether it's been new programming or whether it's been, hey, we want to do this differently next year? I know it's been several year journey, so there's been different iterations along the way. Any lessons learned that have impacted your view moving forward?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest lesson is in the theme of some of the others, and that is you never do this alone. Never hesitate to use the resources of everybody around you. The connection is everything. And the connection of other shelters, the connection of the city and the county, the connection of other resource providers across the city. That's how all of this comes together.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for being so generous with your time to share about your experience. And I know that's been of such great interest to other churches that are looking at this and considering participating. And we hope they will. Well, as we approach the conclusion of our time together, I thought it'd be useful to talk about the pivots that we make and how sometimes we approach inclement weather shelter independently, and other times, we have to move facilities. We have to expand. So in thinking about that, I know basically as shelters get full, we look at other locations. There's a location here at Fair Park that we've moved to several times. I'd love to hear from you on what the implications of all that have been, as I know you've been in all those different facilities before doing this, and how things change and pivot, and how new resources are brought to the table, and then I'll share a little bit as well.
All right, yeah. We've been, as we find that we have more than one freezing night, when we get up to 3 or 4 freezing nights in a row, especially if we can see and know that we're going to get into that kind of extreme temperatures ahead of time, we open what we call a mega shelter, or open up to a larger space so that we can be sure that we're ready for the numbers that we'll really have. And you know, on the morning calls that you mentioned before, that's such an important time to really just map out figuring out how we're going to do that. Who might take on making sure we've got meals covered for that many people. The city really coming together with locations that could work to house that many people, and just the various things that are needed for health and for safety in those settings. It's really incredible to watch how that whole community comes together to build out something so big in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how we've transitioned to the Fair Park Automobile Building in years past, and especially when there's ice and snow on the ground, and like to your point, when you say it's going to be several days, man, so much changes, right? More and new volunteers show up. We tend to have more security that's on site. Right. You know, it's a larger facility, so we have as many as 1,200 people in the automobile building, whereas typically, your shelter operates about 80 its max capacity, and I know Austin Street's secondary facility, caps out at about 360. So once we're both full, right, then that's usually the appropriate next step. And but we still need the community, right? We still need, all the different volunteers, people to provide meals, people to show up and help, people to contribute, and so all those things kind of come together. And I'm always so grateful for the Union Gospel Mission bus that they allow us to use, the school bus. And, Austin Street's got a 40-passenger bus as well that we pick up people and get them to where they need to go. And we've got our volunteer drivers at the Stew Pot. But all that transition taking place and us doing it together and having the protocols ready to execute that when we're expected on it is such a huge part of it as well. So thank you all for your time today. And if you are interested in participating in the Temporary Inclement Weather Shelter Collaborative effort, we hope that you will click the link at the bottom of the screen or go to the City of Dallas website. Thank you very much.